Hi, I'm Alan Webb, and I've been with this crazy event called Summernats since it started. In 2020, 33 years later, we've just come out of the Summernats we held while Australia was burning around us. And like the rest of you, we walked straight into the world-stopping coronavirus pandemic. During the first couple of weeks of this crisis, Andy Lopez asked me if I'd like to tell the story of Chic Henry and the Summernats. I asked Cam Sullings, a Canberra journo and presenter, to help me tell what we think is one of the truly great Australian stories. This is what we came up with.
What comes to mind when you think of Canberra, Australia's capital city? Maybe the fact that it's a peaceful, calm, pretty place where laws are made. Well, for 4 special days in January, Canberra becomes the complete opposite of all those things. It becomes a different kind of capital city, the capital city of noise. The capital city of horsepower. The capital city for burnouts, chrome, turbos and blowers. Canberra becomes the capital city of fun, whether it be with your friends or family. Yes, Canberra is home to an event like no other. Canberra is home to the Summernats.
If you want to see a burnout, there's nothing else that even comes close to the skids that you'll see at Summernats, a sport that was cavalier from the very beginning. These days, of course, it's a professional sport recognised worldwide. Sanctioned rules, judging systems, huge investment in cars, burnout masters and qualifying world records. I'm Cam Sullings, long-time attendee and now presenter at Summernats. Welcome to the podcast. Chic Henry, his Summernats story.
So I'm Andy Lopez and I'm one of the co-owners of the Street Machine Summernats. Summernats are pretty famous for burnouts and Australia does have the best burnout scene in the world. Summernats 26, back in 2013, we had a harebrained idea to set a world record for the largest simultaneous burnout. 69 cars rolled onto the track, 68 spun tyres, made smoke. The guys from Guinness World Records came out and gave us the official world record. People tried to break that record around the world for the next 2 years. No one did, so we thought we'll smash it again. So we put 103 cars out on the pad that time, made smoke, grabbed ourselves our second world record. 2017, the Saudis took our record officially. 119 cars spun tyres on Saudi National Day, somewhere in Saudi Arabia. Guinness were there, they said it was legit, and we said good on them, we're going to take that back.
Hi, I'm Brian Sobel. I'm the officially trained Guinness World Records adjudicator for the attempt today of the largest simultaneous car tire burnout. In this case, it's burning out the rear tires of a vehicle within a 30-second period. The burnout is classified by Guinness World Records as the tires spinning with the car stationary and actual smoke coming from the tire itself. We've got independent witnesses laid out every 5 vehicles to make sure during the 30 seconds that the cars are going to be participating. So even if we have 150 cars come in, we don't know if it's going to be a record until we get the full participating cars at the end of the attempt.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Take back our rightfully owned Guinness World Record. Brian?
I can tell you guys listening out there and the drivers and everyone who participated that it was a valid attempt. I tell you that we did have over 119 register to actually come in. And I can also tell you that we did have to disqualify about 6 cars for not being able to participate during the time. The count that we've come up with today, as I've heard the tradition is to give the thumbs sideways or up or down. The count we've come up with today is 126.
Gary Myers is a long-term entrant right from day one, Grand Champion winner, but is best known for his burnout skills, including Burnout Master, World Burnout Champion, and of course he is a long-time friend of Chic. Gary's son Jake is now a leading Burnout Master himself. Gary, what's your earliest memories of Summernats?
Yeah, it was probably Victor Bray and Captain Cuzzo. You know, there wasn't a great deal of, out of control and competitive type cars. Probably Victor Bray and Captain Cuzzo cruising around. It was a pretty awesome memory.
Those guys out there nowadays that do the burnouts, I couldn't keep up with them in a million years. Man, I couldn't even come close to these fellas.
Well, Chic, to the casual observer, what is it about burnouts?
I'm not sure absolutely when burnouts were first really thought of, although Johnny Peterson was probably noticed did the first burnout in Melbourne during the Moomba Festival, and then what he used to do on the burnout at the drag strips when they'd have an oil down, they'd go and get John and he'd come out and do burnouts in his Mark III Zephyr. And then when we, I can't remember whether we had burnouts in Shepparton, but we had it in Narrandera at the showgrounds there, so burnouts weren't new to us, and I know the Hot Rodders used to have burnout competitions. When we first came to Canberra in 1982, we couldn't have the burnouts there. We couldn't even have it when we went up to the road to Mitchell because it was a horror story to a lot of people. But then the 84 and 86, we were able to have the burnouts along what we eventually called Lunatic Lane during the Summernats. And I guess the most memorable burnout of all, or two actually, was Victor Bray in Black Betty in his 57 Chev. And I mean, the noise of that car, the whine of the blower of him doing there, that was, people still talk about that. This massive burnout down there. And the other memorable burnout was a Corvette that I'd built for a guy that caught fire. And this massive, like it was a hell of a flyer. And once again, got on the front cover of Street Machine and all that sort of stuff. And but the burnouts now are going to become a part of it all. And of course then for the 88 first Summernat, I could not have run the event at all without having built a burnout track, which is what we did, one of the other massive expenses that I had to incur. What we had to do then was come up with a judging criteria that allowed us to judge which was, why one burnout was better than another. And it really was pretty simple. It was, you had to make instant smoke. In other words, as soon as you launched the car, dropped the clutch or hit the loud pedal, the car had to make massive smoke straight away. You had to hold that amount of smoke, and then whatever else you could do. So it was insta smoke, lots of smoke, and sustained smoke. So so it was as simple as that. One time I was being interviewed by ABC Radio Nationals. It was on a Saturday morning. And the lady interviewing me, to her credit, she was asking me some really terrific questions. So obviously she'd done some research on it. So she said to me, "So what's the burnouts all about? Give me, what's such a big deal about it?" And so I gave her a bit of a rundown about how we judge it, and it's a big deal, and a lot of people it's like really expressing yourself. This is a big thing to do. Mine's bigger than yours, etc., etc. Anyway, that's all fine. And I said, but when the car does a massive burnout, and it's getting towards the period of time where they're just about ready to stop, and the big deal is when you blow the tyres, right? Okay, the crowd carry on. They cheer and go on when the tyre pops. And if you pop 2 tyres at once, well, that's just so great to the crowd. And in fact, it can be likened to a multiple orgasm. Well, the phone went sort of quiet for a moment. and then it was like, well, moving right along. Anyway, that went national because one of the sponsors was actually driving to Canberra that morning.
Brilliant.
And he was listening to the radio. He said, I couldn't believe that you said that.
So, mate, who were the players in the early days?
Well, probably, obviously Johnny Peterson put in an appearance here. Gary Myers, and what was a big deal about Gary's Mustang is that, whilst everybody else might think about big cubes and everything like that, Gary had a blown-on sort of a 302 Windsor in the early Mustang, and that made massive horsepower. But it's more than just the horsepower; it's the sustainability to be able to keep revving the car for a period of time to make sure the tyres keep spinning and stay molten, because that's the secret to the burnout. You've got to get those tyres molten. And that's why that instant smoke and lots of smoke, the moment that the car backs back a bit and the tyres cool down, then the car gets traction. And then that's when they usually run into the fence, and much to the crowd's entertainment. But, so Gary's a big deal.
Want to get your hands on the latest Street Machine Summernats official merch? We're proud to announce the launch of our brand new online merch store that's packed with awesome gear. There's t-shirts, footies, beanies, bar mats and more from your favourite past events. We've even remade the original Summernats 1 t-shirts. Classic! Grab any piece of merch for a limited time and you'll score a bonus bit of merch completely free. It's only while stocks last and some items will sell out, so head to summernats.com.au now. Gary, what did you think the first time you saw the burnout track?
The first burnout track was the old burnout track, virtually where, it was just the road where we actually camp on. So that was the burnout pad in the very early days of Summernats. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. You weren't allowed to do any donuts, but there was trees in the road, and as soon as someone did do a doughy, they'd get thrown off. But, yeah, no, they were pretty good old days initially.
And so as the technology developed from year after year and people bringing new cars, could you believe what you were seeing?
Yeah, well, I thought I would never be campaigning a blown alcohol car. It took us, when we decided, to keep up with everyone and the direction it was going. So, I had to get my head around alcohol and tuning, and obviously you get that right, and we've got a very reliable combo and can see the whole season out without any real issues. Has escalated hugely from the very early days.
And what was the most difficult element to get right as far as the engine and all the components were concerned?
It's definitely the tune, and there's not a great deal of tuners here in Australia and even Melbourne and Sydney. It's not like a drag racing tune. And once you understand and learn about alcohol and injection, they're only designed for idle and full throttle. In a blown application, you're partial throttle and not even quarter throttle. George Saparovich was a drag racer from the very early days, and obviously one of the first blown burnout cars, which was so much on song. People thought I was crazy. I just loaded the car on the trail and drove all the way to Perth. George tuned the car on the dyno and waved magic wand over it, and then come home, and then it's a matter of learning the basic tuning and the characteristic alcohol. We've probably got one of the, most cars on point with our tune, because we're just constantly chasing that, and when they're on song, that's when you know that the tune's spot on.
Do you think Summernats gave the platform for the burnouts to become just so huge in what they are today?
Yes, definitely. A lot of different events tried to take it over, but there's nothing like Summernats.
Chris Christo, he was one of the early burnout champions. And there were people that would come out of there and just do huge burnouts, because it was I mean, there were people like Mark Scaravuzzi who told the whole world that he was going to, blow everyone away. And when he got there, in actual fact, he'd built his car, this XT Falcon, that was more like for drag racing. And so the car hooked up a bit too much. He was getting traction and ran into the fence. Well, the crowd thought that was just bloody wonderful because he'd made such a big issue out of it all. An interesting person who's been there for a long time, and he ended up being one of the masters, was Greg Young. Now, I met Greg Young in the early Street Machine Nationals with his 68 Chevy Impala. That car still comes to the event. Now his son drives it. And while everybody's driving a supercharged car, he's got a single carburetor on a big block. So it just goes to show you don't need the killer engine to do good burnouts. But then as we developed over the years, then we got the specialist that come in like Victor Bray when he built his race cars built for burnouts. And then we had things like Frank Gaffiero with a Bandag Bullet. Well, such was the focus on the burnouts that the wild cars were getting built, special purpose cars, and then of course we developed the Masters competition. The way that people just sit there, the whole place is covered in smoke, and I used to be able to watch this afterwards when we were doing the video on the DVD after the event. And there'd be this massive burnout, and here's all the grandstands chock-a-block or over on the mound, and the smoke would be blowing across through the crowd. It was like a ghost blowing through the crowd, and there'd only be the odd person waving the smoke away from their nose, and the mob would sit there. They all thought it was like being next to the bloody perfume factory.
We met Chrissy earlier in the podcast. You might remember she's a great friend of Chic and was in the core team of people who gave birth to the Summernats. She started as a scrutineer in the early days, then went on to manage the burnouts. So she's seen the sport evolve to where it is today, and she's become accustomed to being covered in rubber. Chrissy, what was it like to be so close to the track and all the action?
As I got older, I was getting a bit more wary about, oh my God, I could get killed doing this.
Right.
Because, back in the early days, you'd wear the short shorts and just an official T-shirt and no protective gear at all. As the years progressed, you sort of got a bit more aware of what was happening. But, yeah, everyone was just out to have a good time, and we all loved it, and we just kept going back because it was a really good atmosphere. I mean, it still is.
Then it developed to the point where the year I think we had Peter Gray, I think we had Peter Gray or Debbie Gray driving the Camaro, and Gary in the Mustang came out there, and we had two cars doing side-by-side burnouts. Never been seen before, never done it before. When we used to do the video years ago, it was really obvious for the popularity of the video. All of the rest of the event was cool. People loved seeing it. They loved seeing themselves in a video. They love seeing themselves in a magazine. It's all about look at me, and your moment in time.
Those guys out there nowadays that do the burnouts, I couldn't keep up with them in a million years. Man, I couldn't even come close to these fellas.
I'm fantastic. But the burnouts, the wildest and craziest part of the event, was the most popular part. Did it make any sense? No, it never. And they just sit there year after year watching the burnouts.
So
and people
good.
that stand there on the side of it, and after the event they'll go down and grab a tyre carcass and put it around their neck like they've won a bloody award at the Olympics. Unbelievable. Does it make any sense? No, not really, but unless you're an absolute revhead and you think it's just fantastic.
Burnouts, of course, have had an impact on performance businesses as well, building new burnout cars, supplying performance parts, and that's something that you could never have envisaged happening.
No, in the early days, one of the companies that's been involved in the Summernats, they were saying to me that you shouldn't be doing this, because those cars those engines that are revving like crazy to 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 revs, and there's no torque being applied because the tyre's spinning like crazy and the engines are going to destroy themselves. Well, that never came to fruition because what people were able to do was build their engines to suit, because the torque is only really applied in the early part of it all till you get the tyres nice and molten, and then it's only a matter of whether the engine can maintain the sustained revs. As things develop, then people like Rockets selling those big, the mad-looking blowers, and Crocam's building camshafts, grinding camshafts to suit, and so many other companies, and cylinder heads, and on and on and on, like engine builders all over the country building. But, it wasn't also just the burnouts too. It's like when we developed the horsepower heroes, the big deal there too was when not just the supercharged, but when turbochargers became a big issue, and people started to realise that you could run a turbo on the street and have it perform. Because years and years ago, one of the things that no one wanted to know about turbos because they had trouble with turbo lag and under bonnet temperature, etc., etc. But then when they started to put on intercoolers and all of that sort of stuff, and what developed that part a lot was when the 4-cylinder or the pocket rocket cars, like the Jap, those cars that were coming out of Asia. And then the Street Machine side of it saw that as well. And so one flowed into the other.
Yeah.
It's a bit like the hot rodders that poo-pooed, the cars with graphics and billet wheels. Well, wasn't long before they bloody started putting that stuff on their cars.
100%.
And still do. And a lot of the cars that are built, not only for drag race, not only to come to the Summernats with their wild and crazy engines, but for what reason? We built this bloody wild engine and wild car, and even if you're not going in the burnouts, some of those cars that were in Tough Street, and some of them saw a bit of drag strip life, but it was all about look at me, wow, big is better, and it's just, I'm glad it made no sense because that was really created so many of the features of the Summernats that everyone went home saying, oh man, did you see that?
Yeah.
Look at this.
Did you ever have a favourite burnout?
Yeah, I guess so. There were after a while, there were just so many that caught on. These days now, when you see them on the new placement of the burnout track, and a term that wasn't there years ago, and they call it when they tip in. And they just go massive, 8,000 revs from the start line. And then when they get to the burnout pad, just absolutely throw it in there. And then when the smoke, they're hidden in the smoke, and how the hell they can figure out where the bloody Armco rail is and the concrete barriers and stuff like that. But I suppose a lot of that comes from experience. When Victor and Peter Gray and I remember when Peter Gray, he came put a top fuel engine in his car and all, it was more and more and more. Big is better. Let's go crazier. There was a mob from Melbourne, and I can't think of what the exhaust company is, and they put a top fuel engine out of their dragster in a Mustang, and they couldn't drive it around much. This is a 5,000 horsepower car. And we had to keep them off the road because they had zoomies. That's when the pipes come straight out the side of the car. And it was killing the people, because the smell of the methanol with probably a bit of nitro mixed. And we just wouldn't let them drive around because the noise that a top fuel engine makes is killer. Yeah. I loved it every time he came out when it comes to burnouts, is Frank Gaffiero's Bandag Bullet. I thought that was the coolest thing with those two engines in there. Each one, I think, had 4 turbos on it, and the flames shooting out of it and him spinning around, and I think there was a Detroit diesel in it, roaring and carrying on. And I stand there and say, oh, man, I love this shit, Paddingham.
And Chic, tell me, could you have ever envisaged or believed that from, what you started there on the burnout track way back in the early days has gone on to, over 200 events around the country and then the national series that then come back and lead into the final event on the burnout track at Summernats?
No, maybe not, but you know what? I suppose now I've become much more of a promoter than an enthusiast. And a promoter just wants to develop more and more and more if it's at all possible. It's a bit like people say to me, what are you going to do next time? Well, it was always about what can I do next time? How can we make it better? How can we, make the event so big, so difficult for anybody to even duplicate? No one was ever going to come anywhere near us in so much of what we did, with so many different things going on. And of course in the burnouts, because it was growing to the point we also had to throw good prize money at it, because, some of those engines, like just a basic engine before you really hang all the rest of the bits on it, were $30,000 and $40,000 engines.
Yeah.
Not to mention everything else that had to be done to the car. Bloody torturous out there for those cars. I remember the guy from Melbourne, I can't think of his name, but he came in a Commodore, or a really early Commodore, there was beautiful purplish and different colour graphics on it. It must have been a $30,000 paint job. He did a fantastic burnout. I can't remember whether he placed or anything. But what did he do? He got out and jumped up on the car and jumped up on the roof and waving at the crowd and carrying on. And those of us that knew the car, they're saying, oh, Jesus, on that paint job, you've got to be joking. But such is the level of excitement, the ego and their moment in time. But have a look at the lineup that's coming down for the Masters. People like Peter Gramusa. You can't ever take anything away from Gary Myers and now Jake coming out there and doing it year after year. And it's like everything else. You could almost put the name elite to the Burnout Masters because they've become so good at it. Such is the intention of getting out there on that track and just letting it all hang out. What a wonderful opportunity for these people to get their moment in time.
And it goes to Masters champion for Summernats 32 in Sicko, Jake Myers. It just had to be. It had to be. We had a father-daughter combo, pick-up grand champion, and now we have a father-son combo eventually making their way to the top of the burnout scene. Jake, this is wild. You've done it. You've followed in your dad's footsteps to become the burnout master. Well done.
Yeah, mate. No, I'd just like to say thanks to my dad. There's no way I'll be able to do this. Thanks to Blower Motorsports. My missus Hayden for changing me tyres. This is a dream come true. Thank you.
Gary, congratulations. You are the Burnout Master again.
It's pretty awesome. We won the big one in 2000 when they changed the rules, and to win this one this year and dedicate this win to Milton Adderley, I am so chumped, and we took out first and third in the go-away with the cars. It's just been awesome.
Planning on being part of the world's wildest car festival but haven't got your entry in? Entries to Street Machine Summernats 34, proudly supported by Rare Spares, are limited to 2,000 and will sell out very soon. With limited entrant passes remaining, some people will miss out. So don't delay. Head to the website and lock in your spot before they're all gone. And we'll see you at Summernats. Summernats is the biggest horsepower party on earth, and the best way to do Summernats is with a Platinum Pass. Going Platinum gets you more than just prime shaded seating at the burnout pad. You'll also score an official Summernats merch pack, Platinum only discounts, early access to the top 60, a fast lane to get into the venue, free parking and more. Platinum Passes sell out every year, so grab yours today from summernats.com.au and do the Nats in style. Chick, we're counting through your top 6 all-time favourite Summernats memories. What's the memory that stands out as the third best all-time great memory for you?
In the really early days, which turned out to be a bit of a horror story, what we needed to do on Saturday night was have a sacrifice. I figured out what was the most hated car. And back in those days, the most hated car, it seemed, was a Volvo, and they used to copper flogging. So anyway, on Saturday night, it was New Year's Eve, I had a big platform built out on the arena, and hidden underneath it was a car that we were going to blow up. Now, the car was set up with special effects. not just say that we're going to blow it up. Anyway, I'm talking to the crowd because we're getting close to midnight, and we're going to say, what do you reckon I got covered up out there? What's the most hated car in the world? Is it a Volkswagen? No. Is it a Vauxhall? No. What do you reckon it is? And they're saying, Volvo, Volvo, Volvo. Anyway, I took the cover off and they all went bloody insane. The boys had it set up so that it was could drop the suspension. So, boom, dropped it down. Then we had a bonnet scoop pop out of the bonnet. And then we blew the roof off it, much to everyone's amusement. Massive cheers. And anyway, now we're getting real close to midnight. What are we going to do with it? Rah, 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 rah. We got to kill it. Everyone hates it. I swear, my voice has never been any good since that night. Anyway, we had fireworks set up so they converge like those flares, they fire up. Yep. And I'm counting 10, 9, 8, 7 down to 1, and then boom. Well, this bloody Volvo absolutely blew to smithereens. Bits went everywhere. Every Volvo in town was fair game. The big thing I learned as an event organiser, if you wind the crowd up, you have to wind them down. And I didn't know that. And I wound them up and off they went like bloody firecrackers. So that was a very, very memorable night.
Volvo thinks the design of a car should be as intelligent as the person who drives it. The seat provides more than a place to sit. It can make you a better driver. You can see through it, and it's infinitely adjustable to afford you better control over the controls. And if an important light burns out, this lights up.
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
It's no surprise that a car this carefully thought out should appeal to people who think.
10,
87% of all Volvo buyers are college educated.
6,
the other 13%
5, 4,
are just
3,
plain
2,
smart.
1.
It didn't take long for the Nats to attain legendary status throughout Australia, and particularly in the USA, where the custom car scene is huge. Chic made a policy to invite industry luminaries from overseas to share their knowledge and experience. And for those of them who had never heard of the Summernats, always left with the same opinion. There's nothing like the Summernats anywhere in the world. You've got to get to the Summernats. Street Machine Summernats 34 is set to be one of the biggest horsepower parties Canberra has ever seen. Tickets are selling fast and discount entries are now open for a limited time via the website. And that's also where you'll find our brand new range of official Street Machine Summernats merch. Entrant and platinum passes will sell out very soon, so head to summernats.com.au to lock in your spot today.